I used to think prison stripped a man of power, until I ended up in the same block as the one they put Sean Diddy in. From the moment I saw him, it was clear he wasn't worried about us. He was watching for something else, something outside the walls. He barely slept, made strange calls on a phone I swear no one gave him, and every night he'd trace the same symbol into his bunk, then wipe it away before morning. It wasn't panic. It felt calculated, like a ritual. It didn't take long for me to realize that Diddy was in a pretty bad spot with some powerful people who wanted to do away with him. We think he's the bad boy, lol. The bad boy has a master the world is yet to know. So let me ask you, do you really believe the most powerful fall unless someone in the shadows decides they should? Tell me what you think in the comments. I need to know someone else sees it too. And if you're still here, like, comment, and subscribe before this story disappears the same way he might. What caught me first wasn't that it was him. It was how still everything felt when I walked in. The room had this weight to it, like something had settled there long before I did. He was sitting on the edge of the lower bunk, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on the floor. He didn't look up or speak a word to me. Just gave this slow nod, like whatever was supposed to happen next wasn't up to either of us. Most inmates fidget. They talk, try to measure you up, try to own the space. He didn't bother with any of that. Just kept to himself, quiet, focused on this piece of string he had wrapped around his finger. Every now and then, he'd unwind it a little, then loop it back again. Same pattern, same pace. It didn't feel nervous. It felt practiced. That first night, he never laid down. I stayed up too. Around 3 a.m., he leaned into the wall, pressed his thumb into a spot behind his bed, and just held it there. A long time. Then I saw his mouth move. No sound came out, but it wasn't random. There was rhythm to it, something he'd done before. A while later, he pulled out a phone. One of those old flip models, barely holding charge. No idea how he got it, but it didn't belong here. He kept his voice low, but I heard enough. If it leaks, I'm finished. That's what they said. They don't need me anymore. Just the silence. The way he said it, flat, steady, made it clear. This wasn't panic. It was a man repeating something he'd already accepted. That's when it started to click. He wasn't here to serve time. He was here to be erased. And whatever routine he'd built around himself, it wasn't for comfort. It was the only thing keeping him from going under. There's a routine here that doesn't show up on paper. It happens late, hours after lights out, when most of the block is dead, quiet. That's when the door to the cell unlocks. Always without warning or sound. The guards don't announce anything. They don't flash the lights. They don't say his name. He just gets up and walks out. At first I thought it was maybe some legal interview processing or some kind of high-profile protocol. But after the third night, I started paying attention to the pattern. He'd leave at 3:07. Every time. Never a minute before or after. And when he came back, he wouldn't speak for the rest of the night. Sometimes not even the next day. His posture would change. His eyes would look slightly off, not glassy or blank, just distant in a way that made you feel like he was still somewhere else. He'd sit on the edge of his bed, hands resting on his knees, but his fingers wouldn't stop moving. Tapping his leg, adjusting his string, brushing at his pants like something was stuck to them. That part never seemed to stop. He'd do it until his fingertips went red. I never asked where he went. I didn't need to. One night, I was woken by the sound of footsteps. Not booted guards, bare feet, quick, uneven, heading toward the end of the corridor. I caught a glimpse through the narrow window slot in our door. 2 men in plain clothes, not prison staff. One of them had a clipboard. The other held what looked like a padded bag, but not the kind used for clothes or gear. It looked heavy. They took him without handcuffs. When he came back that night, he looked straight at me for the first time since I arrived. No greeting, no words. Just this long, searching stare, like he was trying to figure out if I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to. He sat down slowly, took off his shirt, and wiped at the back of his neck with a towel. I saw bruising around his spine. Faint, even lines. Not from a fight. Not from falling. Too straight, too uniform. That was the first night I heard him talk in his sleep. It wasn't mumbling. It was full sentences, low and clear. Names. Dates. Then a phrase I hadn't heard before. They're counting backwards now. He repeated it twice before stopping. When I asked him about it the next morning, he looked past me and said nothing. Later that day, a guard pulled me aside during routine check-in. Said I was being moved to a different block. No reason, no paperwork. Just told to pack and wait. I said nothing. But when I got back to the cell, Diddy was sitting up, already watching me. "They don't like you listening," he said. The first time he'd spoken to me directly. I asked him where they took him at night. He stared at the wall for a while, then said, "They ask questions they already know the answers to. But they keep asking anyway. Makes them feel like they're still in control." I didn't press him. I just nodded and started folding my things. I've been gone from that block for weeks now. But I still wake up at 3:07. Every night. I don't know what they did to him, and I don't think he knows all of it either. But I do know this. He isn't just here because of what he did. He's here because someone's trying to erase everything he could still say. But before I left, there were more weird, serious things happening that almost made me go nuts. It started with the string. I'd seen him wrapping it around his finger since day one, but I never really paid attention to how deliberate it was. He never let it tighten too far, never let it loosen too much. And he always wound it clockwise, never the other way. Every time he came back from those late night walks, he'd sit down, wipe his face with a shirt, and reach for the string. The way he handled it made it clear. It wasn't a distraction. It was a step in something larger. There were other things too. He always kept his mattress pulled slightly away from the wall, just enough to fit his hand behind it. At first I thought it was a habit, but after a few nights I saw him slide something flat into the space. Thin sheets of folded paper, maybe 4 or 5. Sometimes he'd take them out, unfold them slowly, stare at them like he was waiting for something to change. Then he'd fold them again, just as carefully, and slide them back without saying a word. He had a rhythm to these things, a pattern. He'd press his thumb into the wall at the same spot every night, not just a touch, pressure, like he was trying to activate something. Then he'd close his eyes and whisper something under his breath. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was always the same. Low, steady, emotionless. One night, I asked him about it. I didn't plan to. It just came out. He just finished whatever that sequence was. String, paper, wall. And I said, "What is that supposed to do?" He looked at me, tired but not surprised. Then he said, "It's not about stopping them. It's about keeping myself visible. If I disappear too far inside, there's nothing left for them to erase." I didn't understand what he meant at the time. But something in the way he said it made me stop asking. The next few days, I started noticing smaller details. Scratches under the bunk, shaped and tight, repeating lines. 4 tall strokes, 1 diagonal, over and over. He wasn't just marking days. Some were circled, others crossed out. It looked more like a sequence than a calendar. Once I saw him dip his finger in something dark and draw a small mark on the inside of his wrist. It was gone the next day. The part that really got to me was how calm he was while doing all of it. No panic or urgency. One night he didn't go through the steps. He just lay down and closed his eyes. He didn't say anything, but the air in the cell felt thick. I barely slept that night. Neither of us spoke in the morning. That same afternoon, 2 men in suits showed up at the block with no uniforms or names. One of them had a folder. The other had nothing. They spoke to the guards. 10 minutes later, they walked past every other cell and stopped at ours. They didn't take him out. They didn't ask questions. One of them just looked at him and said, "You're off pattern." That was it. They left. He didn't react. just sat back down, tied the string again, and stared at the wall. I don't know what any of it meant. I don't know who those men were, but I know what I felt. And it was the first time I started to believe that this wasn't about protection or punishment. Diddy was still part of something ongoing, something alive. And all those little steps, wrapping a string, touching the wall, folding bits of paper, those weren't rituals in the religious sense. They were systems, like ways to hold himself together long enough for whatever he was tied to keep using him. So I kept wondering, was I supposed to keep this to myself? Or if you saw a man like that counting, marking, whispering into concrete, would you assume he was broken? Or would you wonder what he's still in contact with? Or maybe he's just trying to play odd games to escape his sentence? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I've got a feeling I wasn't supposed to witness any of this. But now that I have, something in me won't let it go. The night felt off before anything happened. I couldn't sleep, and neither could he. I'd started noticing that he never really rested, not deeply. He'd lay down, sure, but his eyes would open every hour like he was keeping time. At some point, he sat up and reached under his mattress. No hesitation, no glancing my way. He pulled out the same old flip phone I'd seen before and opened it quietly. No buttons, no scrolling. He just waited. Then he spoke. "You said it was sealed." His voice was low, calm, not angry, just steady. There was a pause. I couldn't hear the other person, but something in the way he held himself told me this wasn't the first time they'd spoken. "You promised I wouldn't be touched." Another pause. His grip tightened slightly. Still no raised voice, no panic. I saw the list. I know who got cut and who didn't. That wasn't the deal. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, still talking like every word had already been written. "If I go down for this, they don't stop with me. And you know that." Then he added something that made my stomach turn. "I've got copies." It wasn't loud. It wasn't said for effect. Just placed in the air like a card being laid on the table. No bluff, no warning. A fact. He stayed on the call for a few seconds longer, then shut the phone and slid it back into the mattress. He didn't move after that. Just leaned back, eyes open, staring toward the wall. I should have turned away, closed my eyes, played dumb. But he knew I'd heard. We both knew. "You think I'm the one they're afraid of," he said. "I'm just the reminder." That's all he said. Then he lay back down and didn't speak again. I sat there for a long time, barely moving. Something about the way he said it, the quiet behind it, hit harder than anything I'd seen in that cell. He wasn't ranting. He wasn't unraveling. He was confirming things most people shouldn't have access to. Later that night, after it had been silent for a while, he reached under the mattress again. This time he pulled out one of the folded papers and placed it on the floor between us. He didn't explain, didn't look at me, just left it there. I waited until he was still, then opened it. It wasn't a note, no names, no message, just a symbol. Clean, sharp, looked more technical than mystical. Something you'd find buried in a file you were never supposed to see. I folded again and put it right back where I found it. That was the first night I felt like I wasn't just watching something happen. I felt pulled into it, like hearing that call had placed me somewhere I didn't ask to be. He never said another word about it, and I never asked. But since then, anytime I see someone glance over their shoulder before taking a call, I listen a little closer. Have you ever heard something you knew wasn't meant for you? Something that made you feel like you weren't supposed to be there at all? I'd started to notice the timing. They always came for him at 3:07. Never a minute earlier, never later. Some nights, I'd pretend to sleep just to listen for it. That soft shift of movement, the pause before his feet hit the ground, the door unlocking without a sound. I never saw who opened it. He'd be up already, standing by the edge of the bed, waiting like it had all been rehearsed. That night started the same. I didn't open my eyes, but I heard the click, a few footsteps, then silence. But something was off. Usually, the door closed right after he left. This time, it stayed open longer, long enough for me to hear someone speak. Not him. Someone else. I couldn't make out the words. Just a voice, steady, low, a tone that made my stomach tighten. Then the door closed and he was gone. I didn't sleep after that. Morning came. The block stirred the way it always did. Doors clanking, trays sliding under gates, a few inmates coughing through the morning count. But his door stayed shut. No movement. No sound. I waited thinking maybe he'd just been taking longer than usual. That happens sometimes. But then lunch came. Then evening. Still nothing. The guards didn't say a word. I asked one if he'd been transferred. Got a look that told me not to ask again. By the time lights out hit, he'd been gone over 18 hours. I sat on my bunk, staring at the empty mattress across from me, thinking maybe that was it. Maybe they were done with him. No goodbye. No file. Just pulled off the board like a name wiped from a list. But sometime past midnight, I woke up to the door clicking again. Soft. Clean. He walked in like nothing had happened. Except it wasn't the same. He didn't acknowledge me. Didn't reach for the string. Didn't check the wall or touch the mattress. He just sat down, hands resting on his knees, eyes straight ahead. He didn't blink much. Didn't move. No tapping. No quiet whispers under his breath. Just stillness. I watched him for an hour. He didn't lie down. Didn't speak. He wasn't even pretending to sleep. There was something wrong with the way he was breathing. Too measured. Too controlled. Like he was following a pattern he hadn't chosen. By the second night, it hadn't changed. He was still quiet, still locked in that same posture. I tried to speak to him. Just something simple. Asked if he was good. No answer. His eyes flicked toward me, but only for a second. No nod, no words. On the third night, he finally moved. Reached into his mattress, pulled out one of the folded papers, and handed it to me without looking. I opened it after he turned away. This one had no symbol. Just 3 words. It's starting now. He didn't explain what it meant. I didn't ask. That same night, the hallway lights outside our cell flickered 3 times. I counted. 3 quick pulses, then darkness. Nobody else reacted. Since then, the guards have stopped looking in when they walk past. I've caught 2 of them slowing near our door, like they're listening for something, but they never say anything. I hear more whispers from the upper tiers. Inmates mentioning transfers that don't show up on lists. People moved without notice. Conversations that cut off the second you get too close. Whatever happened when they took him that night, it changed something. Not just in him. In here, he still hasn't said anything. And me. I'm starting to feel like I was only supposed to be in that cell long enough to see all of that, because I'm not sure what came through that door was still him. It's been weeks since I got transferred out of that cell, but I still think about it every night. Not just the room or the rituals. It's what was underneath all of it. The part that the world never gets to see. The cell I'm in now is quieter in a different way. Normal, almost. But that kind of normal feels fake after what I saw. Guards come and go without looking over their shoulders. Inmates talk loud. Nothing flickers. But it all feels thinner, like a set built over something much deeper, much worse. I kept telling myself that once I was moved, the tension would lift. That I'd sleep better, feel distance. But the opposite happened. Now I'm outside of it, and all I can do is wonder if I was only scratching the surface of something I wasn't meant to see. And what haunts me more than anything is the thought that Diddy wasn't the top. That everything he did, all the names, the trafficking, the parties no one was allowed to record, was just his part in someone else's playbook. That he wasn't calling shots. He was following instructions. The kind you don't walk away from. No one in here talks about him. Not openly. But I've heard pieces. One inmate said he saw a van come through the side gate a week after the transfer. No markings, no paperwork, just rolled in past the checkpoints and parked for 20 minutes. Same van left without stopping at intake or med. He swears they were there for Diddy. Another guy, older, quiet, said he used to work at a different facility, before coming here. Said he'd seen the same pattern before. High-profile inmates isolated, taken off site. Returned just long enough to collapse. He leaned in and said, "They're not protecting him. They're holding him for extraction." There are still things I don't understand. Like how his name doesn't show up on half the internal rosters, or how 2 guards that used to cover our block just stopped showing up after a shift last week. It makes me wonder, if Diddy really is just a pawn, how much does he actually know? And if he does know something, if he's still holding leverage out of fear or pride or survival, how long can he really last in a place like this? Because it's one thing to be locked up by the system. It's another thing to be in the way of something bigger than the system. Something that doesn't put your name on a list. Something that doesn't care about court dates or sentences or headlines. He played with power for years. Did things most people only hear whispers about, not rumors. Stories buried under settlements and redactions. And if even a fraction of it is true, if he helped move bodies, blackmail people, funnel money across borders for things that don't belong in daylight, then it's not just justice he's running from. It's whoever gave him permission to do it. And I don't think they gave him permission to start talking. Because if he was just a piece on someone else's board, then silence won't save him. And prison isn't a sentence. It's a waiting room. If you've ever seen someone with too much power look like they were about to disappear without a trace, ask yourself, do you really think they go down because the world caught up? Or because someone behind the curtain decided they were no longer useful? Let me know in the comments. Because if this place is where they send people like that, I'm starting to wonder how close I came to being on the list too. I figured someone has to know that the bad guy in the prison isn't the only one we are looking for, so I arranged for a meeting where I secretly got to get this message out. I kept asking myself, if that was just one man, one piece in something bigger, then how many more are still out there, playing their part and staying protected by forces we'll never see? If someone like him is just a tool, what does that make the rest of us? I want to hear what you think. Do you believe Diddy was running the game, or just following orders from something higher? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story made you stop and think, like, share, and subscribe. We've got more to tell. More stories that were never supposed to be heard,